Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast with your host, as ever, Andy Davis, as we are here to preview the Wildcard Round in the NFL. I am back from New York. With me, I've got two guests to preview the Wildcard Round. First of all, our first guest is making this long overdue return. He was here. He's our standard Texans fan. He's our resident Texans fan, and he is back. Graham Henderson, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Sorry for the bit of a hiatus there. I've had quite a bit going on, and amongst other things. But no, thanks for having me back on, Andy. It's always a pleasure, mate.
Well, yeah, we like to have you on, especially in these wildcard rounds and for playoffs in general. We like to get fans of the teams who are involved. We do normally, we have the last couple of years done a preview of every game in every playoff game with a fan of every team. But as you all know from my New York trip, that was just impossible this week. So I brought two guests on from two different teams. And yeah, we'll see what happens from there. And then also next week, we'll go back to our normal routine of doing a preview for each game with a fan of either team. But of course, you can see on the screen there, if you're watching on YouTube, our other guest is back after a week hiatus. Back from last week, our Week 18 review. Week 18 preview is Ross. Ross, how are you?
I'm good. The fans demanded it. There was clamour on the comments on Twitter. They said, get Ross back. I had to listen and I've returned.
Well, you did come on for Week 18, for our Week 18 preview, and you actually had 11 correct scores. So there's a bit of a difference. So I had 9, pretty standard, cutting mid-table. Danny, however, is the overall, at the end of the season, bottom place. He had only 5 correct scores in Week 18. So he ended up in the final week of the season being rock bottom. So as it stands, our bottom 3 are myself, Danny with 5, and then myself and Luke Campbell from Week 3 with 6 correct scores. And then leading the way is still me with my perfect 16 correct scores all the way back in Week 13. And then our next 2 correct scores are me, but of course our other 2 best performing guests this season are Dan Toomey with 12 correct scores from Week 17 and Olivia Peebles also from Week 12. So also 12 points from Week 6. So yeah, we had no Week 18 review. Of course, I was out in New York, experiencing a lot of New York for my birthday, but one of them included the Jets against Dolphins game, which was once again 7th time of asking, a 7th loss. I don't know when I'm going to see this team win a game. I don't know when it's going to happen. Could be Madrid next year, but you watch, we'll get the Bengals, lose to them, and we'll go 0-8. So this record, I don't know how I'm going to solve this because I've been to 12 Liverpool games. I've seen us win 10. I've been to 8 Dolphins games and I've seen us win then. So 7 games I've seen us win then. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to solve this really because I've seen us play bad teams like the Jets and the Jags. I've seen us play good teams like the Eagles and the Bengals. I don't know how I'm going to solve this issue I've got with seeing us lose games. I don't know how I'm going to solve it.
I mean, I think the hint is the universe is telling you should quit the Dolphins and choose a better team.
Well, I've always said that if Dolphins win a team, I pick the Bears. But if I pick the Bears, it'll be just as bad. I'll pick them. It'd be worse. I'd be rejected the double doink jokes. It's an awful record, and I don't know how I'm gonna.
There's just some things you can't do about it, No. I went over this season and seen the Texans play the Titans at NRG, and they hadn't scored more than 17 points all season. Then they put 32 up against us, So it's just one of those things that you've got to ride out, keep the faith. It will turn round, and then you'll go on a run where you think you're their lucky charm, and they'll never lose when you're there. That's what it goes through.
But Andy said last week, there's another Dolphins fan that he knows that's seen them 16 times, and he's never seen them win. So you're saying it can turn round.
Well, I'm not saying how long it'll take.
I've got to hope it's Madrid next year, especially if I do get the fortune of doing media out there. If I can do that, and see us win whilst covering the team, that will be, I think, a fitting moment. And I must be honest as well. I had a moment at the game where basically I missed Rodgers' 500th career touchdown pass going to the toilet. So I found myself. I said to myself, thinking, you know what? If I can't see him throw his 500th career touchdown, I want to be there for his potentially last ever career touchdown. So there was part of me in the game where I was actually rooting for Rodgers to score 1 touchdown. I still wanted to win the game, but I did find myself rooting for the just them to score a touchdown was Rodgers throwing the ball, because if I'd missed just one touchdown in the whole game and missed both his record-breaking touchdown and his last ever career touchdown, I think that'd have been pretty annoying. So I managed to get at least one of them out of the way, and it's my own fault because I went for a wee and then I went to the gift shop to try and find. It was that cold. I went to try and find some sort of heated blanket somewhere in the gift shop. Wasn't there. As I'm in there looking around, I hear a big scream. I miss it, but I still saw his potentially last career touchdown. So there's always that. But it was overall a good time. I mean, I've been there before and it was torrential rain, so I'm glad I wasn't that. But it was good to take my girlfriend there. She enjoyed it. It was her present to me, one of her presents to me. So can't thank her enough, really. And I did have some content on social, so do check that out on Across the Pod and also Andy Talks NFL on TikTok. But let's move on to the wildcard round, which is going to be, as we all know by now, a very exciting time of year for NFL fans. We have 6 games for you in the wildcard round, and it starts off 9:30 p.m. UK time on Saturday as the Houston Texans take on the Los Angeles Chargers. Believe it or not, Graham, it's actually, you've never had a playoff game in a wildcard round that hasn't been 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Is that a fact you're aware of?
Yeah, they're starting to call it the Texan slot.
I mean,
they think because they think we're going to get beat, they just put us on it, like get our game out of the way, and then everyone can enjoy football the rest of the weekend. I think that's their thinking on it. But yeah, it has been named the Texan slot by some pundits over in the US. Bit upsetting, but.
And of course, you go into this game with maybe not the best form. I mean, it's been a bit of a sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. Obviously, he won the division, but I think we can all, like the Buccaneers, really can say the same thing for you, Ross. We won the division, was really a weak division. Most divisions you wouldn't even be third place in the NFC North or the AFC North. So, Graham, we'll go to you first, of course, in this game. Who's winning it for you? Is it your Texans or is it the Chargers?
Well, you've got to favour the Chargers heavily in this, I think, in this matchup. But it's any given game. Although we were just playing the Titans on Sunday and we only had the starters in for the first drive, it was one of the best opening drives we probably put together all season. It was like the whole offense was humming. The only time they went backwards was maybe a false start penalty. But yeah, they moved the ball well. Everyone seemed in tune. And I think another thing that was pretty telling for us was our depth showed up pretty well on Sunday. Pierce finally had his breakout game this year. I think he went for, 176 yards and a touchdown. One of them was a 92-yarder. I think that's the second longest rushing touchdown for the Texans. So the Chargers are a very good team. Harbaugh's done a great job turning that team's mentality around, making them more of a force. Herbert's been excellent this year. He's very careful with the football, but our defense is very good at getting after the football. So that should be a battle to watch. He's only, I think, given up 3 interceptions this year, for 20 and a buck for passing touchdowns. But if you look at, we've got Stingley, Kalen Bullock, both got 5 interceptions this year. Kamani Lassiter, he's also got his name on a few of them. So yeah, that should be quite an interesting matchup there, because some of these guys who don't throw a lot of picks, when they do throw one, that can put them all off. And like our defensive front, I think Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter are up there as one of the best rushing combos in the league this year, for pressures and sacks. So yeah, if we can get enough pressure and force some of these mistakes, then hey, why not? They're obviously a very good unit. Don't concede a lot of points themselves. They've got quite a low points per game average, their defense, but we just have to find a way. We can move the ball, obviously. Nico Collins went over 1,000. Mixon's went over 1,000 this year, so we can move the ball. Let's just see if we can do it.
If you looked at the stats, and Stroud is the second most sacked quarterback this season.
Yeah,
obviously a massive worry. It is just we've got to protect him, and I think with the Chargers, they've got one of the best defenses in the league. Looking at their overall sort of stats now, my page is frozen. But if I can get at the stats of the defense, if you look at the Chargers' overall yards allowed per game, it's in the top 10 sort of range. And if you look at the passing as well, again, it's top 10 yards per game allowed. And run game's a bit less of a thing, so you could argue maybe Joe Mixon could be there to have a day. But I think, if you want to, to win this game and go on to make the playoffs, I think you have to, start with that O-line and really protect Stroud, because it has been a problem this season. It really has, and that's why looking at the last 6 games, you've lost 3 and won 3. So it's and let's not forget the game against Baltimore where it was 31-2, where it was a real. In a big slot, it was Christmas time. It was the whole world was watching. Or the Beyonce halftime show, people were, even non-NFL fans, were staying up to watch that, and you put up a bit of a stink. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, laid an egg.
Awful. I think that goes to show not only how much you guys struggled in this game, and the problems there, but I think also when you come up against a good team like the Ravens, how much you crumble. And I think that's got to be worried going into. You think about if you win this game, you're going to be playing most likely attention to Chiefs. If all the teams win at home, you'll be playing the Chiefs on the road. Bad memories, of course, of playing the Chiefs away, and then if not, it'll be the Bills or potentially the Ravens away. So
it's going to be cold. Whatever we go, it's going to be cold.
And I think it's some fierce teams there, and I think how bad you performed. I mean, looking at the teams you have beaten. I mean, you lost to Green Bay, playoff team. Lost to Detroit Lions, playoff team. You lost to the Vikings, playoff team, and then you've beaten the Titans, the Dolphins, Jags, Cowboys. None of these teams have actually made the playoffs. So that's, last year I experienced the Dolphins fans only beat one team with a winning record, and then we get to the playoffs, and what happens? We get blown out by the Chiefs. So I think, for me, it's a massive worry. That's why I have gone for the Chargers to win over the Texans. I'm sorry, Graham. I just feel like it is the Chargers' sort of game to win, even on the road. I just don't believe the Texans have enough all-round winning. I think this Chargers, they've got J.K. Dobbins back now. He's been excellent when he has been fit. And Loud McConkey's been such an impressive rookie, and Herbert's thrown barely any picks, and Jim Harbaugh's has got this team rocking. And I do think they're a dark horse to make at least. I think they could even make the title game in the AFC. I do think they could be playing the Chiefs or Bills or Ravens in that championship game. I think the Chargers win this game, and if I'm honest, I don't think it's close. Ross, heading over to you finally for your prediction. You got Graham having the Texans, myself with the Chargers. Ross, you got the deciding vote. Who wins it for you?
There's a very similar kind of feeling for one of the reasons I didn't want the Bengals to make the playoffs, and I was like, listen, I hope Denver got into it, is because their O-line is terrible. They cannot protect the quarterback. The Texans have the same issue. For me, I think that Chargers defense is so good. But then I watched us rip them apart. Like, the Bucs ripped them apart on the road in LA. You know what I mean? Like, it is possible when you're at home. This is probably the hardest game to call for me out of all the playoff games. I'm going to say that. And also Justin Herbert's not particularly mobile, especially with he had an ankle injury a few weeks back, so I don't know how well that's healed. I'm going to sneak on the side of the Texans, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's a walk-off field goal.
Interesting. Graham, of course, whatever happens, whether you win or lose, what was your take on the season? Because it was a lot of hype going into the year. You acquired Stephon Diggs, or everything else. Joe Mixon came through the door. You just off the hype of making the division round last season, and CJ Stroud was the talk of the town. He was a media darling. The defense obviously led by D'Amico Ryans and Will Anderson. A lot of talk going into the season, and you won the division, yes, but you, Graham, you've been to games as well, as you said before. What's your take been on the season overall for your team? Because this could be the last time you're on this podcast this season, because obviously if you go out, then that's it. no more Texans appearances for fans coming on the show. So for you, what's your take been overall on the season? Because it has been one that hasn't quite lived up to expectation.
It's been disappointing. There was a lot of hype at the start of the season, and I know every team goes through their spells of tough times in the league. Every team does. We went in with what looked to be on paper one of the most ferocious wide receiving cores in the league. We lose Diggs. We lost Nico first, actually, for a few weeks, and he was flying at that point. It took weeks for other receivers to actually pass him in the yard stats because he was that far ahead. Then we lost Diggs, and unfortunately, just a couple of weeks ago, we lost Dell as well. Brevin Jordan, our tight end, who was probably maybe going to be tight end one this year, went down. We lost Mixon to what I still deem as an illegal hip drop tackle at the start of the year. Could have lost him again in another game. The offensive line hasn't been good. That's led to struggles for CJ Stroud. He'd seemed rushed this year because he knows he hasn't got the protection. I don't think the play calling's been particularly good this year from Slowick. Clock management's been bad. There's been like a series of unfortunate events for the Texans, which has led to them stumbling over the line and winning the AFC South, which wasn't really that difficult. And I think we spoke at the start of the season, and I said the Texans were probably going to have 12 wins. We've got 10. Everyone else in the division said they were going to get 13 wins. And I'm looking at the other guys you had in the pod going, where are you finding the wins? Because I think I'm really clutching at this 12. So where are you finding them? And that proved to be the case. Everyone else seemed to be mediocre. So it's been very disappointing. I think the defense has been really good this year. I know we've lost games by some horrific scores, but when your offense is inept and your defense has to stay on pretty much all game, we've all seen defenses gas out and lose big points and lose big plays. And you start chasing the game and you're trying to make all the plays. You're trying to win the game. You're trying to get picks, tips, sacks, strip sack. You're trying to score the points on defense, and that doesn't work all the time. So it's been one of those seasons. It's been disappointing, but when you make the playoffs, anything's still possible. And that's what you've got to tell your guys all week leading up to this game. Anything is still possible, guys. You have to be in the dance, and we're still in the dance. So let's just see what we can do against the Chargers at home, and we'll take it one game at a time now. That's all we can do.
Yeah, I think, that's why we love the NFL. I mean, is any given Sunday, anyone could beat anyone. And in the playoffs especially, we've seen some shocks over the years. Think about the Bengals shocking the number 1 seed Titans. Think about years ago, you think about like the Broncos, Tim Tebow shocking the Steelers, and there was other occasions, you think about the Giants beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl when they were going 16-0 in the regular season. I don't think it'll be too much of a shock. I think it's not as if, I don't know, I think there's the reason they're the 4th and 5th seed. I think it'd be more of a shock if, for example, the Broncos beat the Bills or something like that. But I think, this game, I think it'll be a slightly a shock. But I think there's definitely will be bigger shocks later on in this episode if they go certain ways. But our next game is a game involving the two AFC North teams as the Pittsburgh Steelers travel to the Baltimore Ravens, who, of course, secured the division over the Steelers just a week ago. Ross, who wins this game for you, Steelers or Ravens?
I mean, you just mentioned about big shocks. I think the Steelers are going to do this. And
really?
Listen, I think I was, raving lyrical about them last week in terms of I love the Ravens wide receiving core, such a talented team. But Lamar struggles against Steelers. He's not got a good record against them. I think if they can really get the pressure on Lamar, force him to run with the ball and kind of stop that passing game. Listen, Lamar's great at running it, but he cannot run it for a whole 60 minutes. He's got to be able to find out. Zay Flowers is out. I think the Steelers have had a bad 6 weeks. I think they've lost 6 in a row. Listen, that's fine. That happens. They've gone flat at the best possible time. This is the time to bounce back. I think Russell Wilson has been in this situation before where he's been underestimated in a playoff, especially in a wildcard round. I have a feeling that the Steelers are going to make this really ugly, and I could see the Steelers maybe by 7.
Interesting. That's interesting for me because I have gone for the Ravens to beat the Steelers. I think, I like my Tomlin a lot. I love him as the coach, Mike Tomlin, and against, I think any other team in the playoffs, I'd be all for them winning. But regular show listeners will know my views on Derrick Henry and how much I want him to win a Super Bowl. So, I'm hoping the Ravens do it this year, and I just feel like it's the Steelers' form is just too worrying at the moment. I mean, you think about for teams to win playoff games, to win Super Bowls, you have to get hot at the right time, and you can't. Dolphins last year started, so well, or 10-3 or something like that. Then you limp into the playoffs, and then you get blown out. And I think the Steelers had it a few years ago when they went 11-0 in the COVID season, and then they ended up getting knocked out the first round. Cardinals a year later, when I believe it was 8-1 or 8-0 before they lost the game, and they got knocked out the first round by the Rams. And I think Steelers, to lose 4 of the last 4 games and 5 of the last 7, it's a worrying time. And I think against the Chargers, against the Texans, I think I could see him, even against the Bills on a good day, I could see him, potentially having a shock, especially with someone like TJ Watt. But you think about that dual threat of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, even without Dave Flowers, I think Lamar Jackson will find a way, and even me just handing it off to Derrick Henry a lot in this game, I think that it's I think it's a mismatch. And I think whilst I think on the other hand, I think that division rivalries mean that form goes out the window, a bit like in football. You think about Man U Liverpool last weekend, Graham, you'll be aware of this as a Liverpool fan as well. Man U being terrible all year, they fought a 2-2 draw at Anfield. So I think like that, and same with the AFC North, division rivalries mean much more, especially in the playoff game as well. I wish I was old enough to be, or a fan at that point when the Packers played the Bears in the NFC title game. That must have been an amazing experience, having arguably the biggest rivalry in the whole league in the biggest game in that conference, apart from the Super Bowl. So I think have such a big rivalry like Ravens Steelers, I think it will make a difference. And I think it will give the Steelers a little bit of an extra edge to their performance. And I think that will maybe even things slightly. But I just feel the Ravens are going to be too strong. I said it since the start of the season. I think it's Lamar Jackson's year, and nothing's going to stop me from thinking they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. Give me the Ravens over the Steelers. Graham, who are you backing?
I'm a bit like Ross on this one. I think the Ravens probably would have preferred anyone else apart from the Steelers in this round, because they're so used to each other. And I don't know if you've watched any of the Hard Knocks with the AFC North. These guys know each other inside out. They know each other's kryptonites, and it's just sometimes who can turn up on the day. This game can go like 2 ways for me. The Ravens either absolutely annihilate the Steelers like they did us on Christmas Day, or it's going to be an in the trenches battle, which I think the Steelers will win. I'm kind of like Ross on that. I just think the Steelers will find a way to win. It's almost like the Ravens have strolled into this the last couple of weeks. They've kind of coasted in, had some easy matchups. The Steelers have struggled, but struggles have to come to an end. Just like we were talking about with your record with your Dolphins, watching them. Everyone's struggles come to an end at some point, and what better way and what motivation than to snap your losing streak against your division rivals, division winners, than to knock the Ravens off and knock them out and shut everyone up about the MVP conversation for Lamar. Who cares about that? It doesn't matter. So yeah, I can see this going. I can see a sneaky Steelers here.
Interesting.
Steelers for a reason.
I mean, you mentioned MVP there. I mean, who would you give your MVP award to? I myself would give it to Josh Allen. Where would you guys, if you guys are one of the ones voting in this award, who would you give your vote to? Graham?
Jackson,
okay. And Ross?
Baker Mayfield. No,
you can't argue with that.
I'm not really sure. I feel like you're just like Josh Allen's fine, but at the end of the day, like, is that just because you want? We were discussing this in our group chat as well. Is that because you want a different face to have won it, a different person to have won it? Lamar is a better quarterback than Josh Allen. Like, that is an undeniable fact. I would admit, well, it's an undeniable fact. He's a better quarterback, and he's been better this season than Josh Allen. I think if you look at the strength of schedule as well, I think the Ravens are probably the hardest schedule. And yeah, I think it would be just Lamar for me. Just.
Do you think as well, the fact that it is just Josh Allen, that Bills team, he's the sole purpose driving that team with wins, where, you think about the Ravens, you've got Henry, you've got Lamar Jackson, and I think that probably does take away some of Lamar Jackson's, for me personally, credentials to win it, because you think about the term most valuable player, I think you can lose Lamar Jackson, still win games with Henry, maybe an average quarterback, but I think you lose Josh Allen, that Bills team, this Bills team probably goes 6-7 wins, so I think that's the difference for me, and I think he's had some big moments, some big wins, twice against the Lions and the Rams, he's put up 40-odd points when the defense struggled, and you had some, the thing of that stat he had where he had a caught for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and threw for a touchdown in the same game, had some iconic moments, the one touchdown where, he gets it just around the pylon and gets it in the end zone, and I think, me personally, I wouldn't be, I'm not going to be annoyed if it is Lamar Jackson who gets it. I think he's a worthwhile winner. And I've applied for creds to be at that event. If not, I'll just buy tickets when I'm there. But, I wouldn't be, if I'm there watching it and if it's him or even Saquon Barkley, I'm not going to be annoyed. But I think personally, if you look at him as a valuable player, I think I would probably give the edge to Josh Allen. And speaking of Josh Allen and the Bills, this is our next game as the Bills host the Broncos. Really want the Broncos to win this game for obvious reasons, but I can't not. I think it's the easiest one to pick for me. I think the Broncos, with Sean Payton there, and Bo Nix has been incredible, and then you think about the team overall in general, it's been really impressive to see what they've done. It's been a real shock of the season. I said off-season I could see him being a top 5 draft pick. Now that's one of the worst takes they've ever made. That's a shocking take, and they've been really good, really impressive. But I think the Bills win this. I think the Bills at home as well. Bills Mafia, it's going to be, even though the Broncos are probably used to the weather, it's not as actually warm in Colorado at times. But I'm going to give the Bills the edge. Graham, Bills or Broncos?
Tough one this as well. Broncos coming in with some, they're coming in with some hype. Bo Nix has obviously had a really good season. I'm trying to look at some of the stats here. He's actually thrown more touchdowns than Josh Allen this year and thrown for more yards. He's obviously had more pass attempts and thrown more picks, but he's obviously not afraid to throw it. His top running back's got half the yards that Cook's got for the Bills. So he's had to burden more of that himself because he doesn't have as prominent a run game. Hard to look past the Bills Mafia though. Really hard to look past. They look like they're locked in now and looking to do some damage. Got all the momentum, but yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bills Mafia. They probably would have preferred a team that didn't like the cold as well, but yeah, that's just what you get, isn't it? It should be an interesting.
Sorry to interrupt you. I bet they were praying for us to win that game against the Jets, and lose. You think about the whole allegations we've got. We can't win in the cold, and I think we proved that on Sunday. It was very cold at Metlife. I think we'd have been struggling massively if we won that game. But you never know. As I said last week, you never know. We could have caused a shock. But fun fact as well, actually, this is actually the first playoff game for the Broncos since they won the Super Bowl. In Super Bowl 50 against the Panthers. Of course, who was MVP in that game? Von Miller. Who's playing for the Bills? Von Miller. So it's interesting that their first time they make the playoffs in, what's that now? 9 seasons? It's against arguably the best player, defensive-wise, of the last 15 years in that team. So, yeah, it's interesting to see how that goes. You sort of think about Matt Stafford last year against the Lions in the playoffs. Interesting what the reception will be like for him. from the Broncos fans. Ross, finally over to you. Is it a clean sweep, or are you picking the shock of the week?
More shocks.
Really?
More shocks. Yes.
No.
Pat Surtain is up. He's a very strong contender for Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
That Denver team in week 3 when they came to Tampa and won, again, that's such a different atmosphere, as in like the temperatures, the air pressure, everything's so different compared to Mile High. And they showed up and nobody gave them a chance, including me, and they schooled us. The only issue I have with the Broncos is they have no running game almost at all. Their running game, Javonte Williams has been not great this season. There's a couple of the guys are really solid. Is it Estime, and I think maybe Mims will carry as well for rushes. But I think Nix has that. Nix is going to be in the league for a while, and whether he bounces around teams, I think he's a very good quarterback, and I can see him being in the league for a long time. I also think the Bills. I don't sit and look at this playoff and go, the Bills, I'm scared of the Bills. The Bills are unstoppable. The Bills are fine. Like, yeah, it's going to be a hostile atmosphere. You know what the Bills Mafia is like. I really liked it. There's something about that Broncos team, and that 38-0, maybe people are saying that's inflating it and making them look better. But at the end of the day, they still showed up. They were relentless, and all that doing is pushing their confidence up. And they've not had that kind of stop-start to the kind of end of the season. I know they lost 2 games and then they won that final game, but that Broncos team's good. I like the wide receiving core. I like who they've got in defense. I'm going to take the Broncos in probably what will be the upset of the wildcard round.
That really would be. I think going back to the Broncos, I mean, if they'd lost that game to the Chiefs and we'd lost to the Jets, well, we did, but I've been sitting there at MetLife watching us lose the Jets, and I've seen the Broncos will lose to the Chiefs. That would be the ultimate blow. So I kind of glad in a way they just got it done and got out of the way and just won. My worst nightmare would have been we lose to the Jets and then they lose to the Chiefs backups. So yeah, that would have been. But it's irrelevant now. We're not in the playoffs. That's it now. I can forget about it for another 9 months. And then moving on to our 9:30 p.m. game as the Eagles take on the Packers for arguably the game of the week. 2 teams, you've got the 7th seed Packers against the 2nd seed Eagles. Although, Graham, it doesn't really feel like it's 2nd against 7th. I think it's a much more even matchup than that suggests, seeding-wise. Who wins it for you, Packers or Eagles?
The Eagles here are playing, like, the NFC North has been an absolute powerhouse this year. I think we can probably all agree with that, bar the Bears. But, they were unlucky on some occasions. But, yeah, I haven't enjoyed when the Texans have had to play any of the North from the NFC. We ran the Packers close. That goes back to what I was saying about bad clock management and use of timeouts and stuff. But could have beat them. Lions could beat them. But the Packers just find a way to win. The thing probably going for the Eagles is they've got probably the best offensive player in the league just now in Barkley this year. Like, he's been absolutely awesome, and he would be my vote for offensive player of the year. I'm actually sad that they sat him. I understand why, but wouldn't it have been great to see him just smash through that record, for the yards in a season? But yeah, looking at it, both QBs questionable. Both will probably play. I'm going to go with the strong run game of the Eagles. They're effective with tush push as well. Just seems to be an unstoppable play. So, yeah, I'm going to back the Eagles on this.
Now, you mentioned a quarterback situation. As it stands at the moment, Hurts has returned to practice, but is limited in capacity, or practice in a limited capacity. And then Love also is down as limited as well, and it's hopeful he'll play on Sunday. So both quarterback sort of positions are really uncertain. I think they both are trending more towards they'll play. I can see Hurts playing more likely than Love. If I had to pick one of the two wasn't going to play, I'd probably say more likely Love doesn't play than Jalen Hurts. But no, I think either way, it's certainly an interesting dynamic to see what happens if it does end up being Pickett against Malik Willis. That'll be an interesting scenario. Ross, for you, who wins it, Packers or Eagles?
I'd like them both to lose, to be honest. That'd be the ideal. But I feel like the Packers, I could just see the Packers win. I don't know. This is the hardest game I'd say to call for the whole weekend. I think this is the tightest because of the quarterback situation. One bad hit on either of those quarterbacks if they start, and it could be backups. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I love Saquon Barkley. I think he's a great player, but I don't think you can just rely on him in that situation. Then if that does happen, if Jalen Hurts ends up unable to play or goes out early again, I don't think Kenny Pickett and Saquon are going to get you there. I'm going to take the Packers, but I would not be putting a bet on this game. In terms of who I'm going to put my money on to win, I'm going to take Packers, but that's just because I hate Nick Sirianni. So,
well, I've gone Packers as well. I'm sticking to my guns. I said before the season started, I think it'd be the Packers making Super Bowl. And I think even you think about the Jordan Love situation, Malik Willis has proved that he can do a good job without with being in play without Love being there. So I think, and Love has at times this season been a bit shaky. So I think they'll be fine without him. I think Willis has won games without him this year as the backup standing in for him. So I just think this Packers team for me has got, I think, this sort. I don't know what it is. It's this feeling about this team the whole year that they're going to do something good and make the Super Bowl, because you think about just the run game of Josh Jacobs and how good he's been. You think about the defense. Think about Xavier McKinney, all his picks, and Clay Walker, and all these players that now come back from injuries as well. Obviously, they lost Christian Watson, but they've still got Dobbs, still got Jaden Reed, still got the Dontavion Wicks, and I think certainly if you're looking at a coaching point of view, I think the floor is light years ahead of Sirianni. So for me, I think it's the Packers, and I think obviously Pickett, if he does play, is a far worse backup than Willis. And I just feel like as good as they've been, and the performance has been incredible, they sort of plodded along without really much talk about them, except Barkley, of course. And of course, you've got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, a fantastic defense, two amazing rookie defensive backs. But I just have this Packers feeling. It's a hunch I've got in me since the start of the year, and I'm going to give the Packers the edge. So I just think they are a very good team. They're young, a lot of them on rookie deals. I think it's the youngest team that actually, in the whole NFL, and that will also they'll be looking for a window now. Of course, they want to try and strike when the iron's hot. And looking at their losses, if you take away the Bears' loss, they've lost to Vikings, who've got 14 wins. They lost to the Eagles, who've got 13 wins. The Lions twice, who've got 14 wins. And, they've ran them close the second time round. They've got better each time. And they're getting better as the season goes on. So for me, yeah, I like Green Bay, and I think they're going to get the win here. Our penultimate game is involving Ross's team on Sunday Night Football as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers host the Commanders. For me, the hardest game to call. Ross, who wins it for you?
This is a rerun of Week 1 at Raymond James Stadium again. Jaden Daniels' first NFL game. Came in, was very good for his first NFL game. They put up 20 points. I think we scored 37. And I think we're going to be looking at a kind of 35, 37, maybe 40 points that's going to be needed to actually win this. That Washington offense is good in areas, very good in areas. Zach Ertz has been in kind of good form this season. Terry McLaurin, obviously Jaden with his legs, but I'm not going to go against my own team, especially at home. We've seen what we've done to the Eagles last year in the first round of the playoffs, 31-9, I think, 32-9, something like that. I look at Baker's got maybe the third or the fourth most passing touchdowns in the regular season, 4,500 yards. Bucky Irving cracked 1,000. Russian Mike Evans cracked 1,000 receiving. We are getting everyone's back from injury pretty much, excluding, Chris Godwin. I think we're going to see a real shootout. I think that's how we're going to play it. Bulls' defense has been not great in the first half, but those halftime adjustments since the bye week, every time I don't think we've conceded more than 10 or 11 points in the second half of a game, held the Chargers to, I think, 0 in LA. Halftime adjustment was going to be big, but we started so poorly, and the first half was dreadful against the New Orleans Saints. But I think people didn't have their eye on the ball because they were pretty confident they could just blow the Saints away. We didn't kind of play in the same style. I'm a bit concerned about, certain areas of the Commanders' offense, but our kind of defense has been tremendous this year. So I'm going to give it to us. I'm going to say the Bucs, a 70-point game.
Wow. Well, I don't know what the over/under is for that, but I'm sure it's that's surely the over option. I've gone Buccaneers as well. I think we talk about the coaching system. It's just been, I think, is a lot better with Todd Bowles. I do feel like Dan Quinn. We've seen it before in Atlanta. Sort of not winning when it matters. Think about the contrast in their losses. The Commanders have lost to the playoff teams they've played. The Commanders lost to the Buccaneers, lost to the Ravens, lost to the Steelers, the Eagles, and you think about then the Buccaneers on the other side. Whilst you can't really take week 1 and week 2 too seriously, they did beat the Commanders and also the Lions in the first 2 weeks. They beat the Eagles. They did lose, 4 in a row, which includes the Chiefs and the Ravens, but then they've gone out and beaten the Chargers. And I just have more faith in an experienced quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who's been in the league for years. Mike Evans, the same thing. Compare that to a rookie quarterback playing his first playoff game on the road with what is probably, I think, definitely is a weaker defense, despite the more wins than the Buccaneers. And for me, I just think that experience they've got, they've won a Super Bowl before. Some of these players who are still there from 3-4 years ago, wherever it was, and I just feel the Commanders had a great season. Don't get it wrong. And I think Daniels has been my pick for Rookie of the Year. I just think maybe as a first year, he may have a little bit of just almost like a learning curve or sort of a welcome to the NFL moment or sort of a down to earth moment. I think he'll obviously learn from it for the better. Albeit as we said about Stroud last year, and he ended up and beat the Browns. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Commanders win it, because I said before, I found it the hardest one to predict. But I just have more faith in the Bucs. So give me the Bucs. But Graham, for you, is it a clean sweep, or can the Commanders get the job done?
I can't really disagree with any points that any of you have made on that. I believe the Buccaneers are going to win it as well. I think it will be a shootout. I trust more in the veteran leadership in Mayfield in these kind of pressure situations. Having a really accomplished wide receiver in Mike Evans, absolute security blanket in these kind of games. Who do you look for? Your most tenured and most safe hands on the field. You actually have your running game doesn't rely on your quarterback taking off, which can lead to him potentially getting hurt. So I'm pretty set on the Buccaneers winning that, but I believe it could turn into a shootout.
Yeah,
and just who loads more bullets on the day.
I mean, when you look at as well, we've got one of the most informed wide receivers in the league, and Jalen McMillan, 7 touchdowns in his last 5 games. Yeah. I mean, that's great. His touchdown against the Saints after he caused the 15-yard penalty on that kind of drive down the field to kind of put us into the position to see out the NFC South and take the division. He just stood up two snaps later. A great throw, got his feet down just at the edge in the end zone, and then that's what won us it. So I think as well we've been mollycoddling Bucky a little bit in the last couple of weeks as well, because he had that kind of hip injury. So I think he'll be back. I hope it's a shootout. I hope it's a great game, and I hope obviously the Bucs just go and kind of just put the foot down and kind of take that step forward. And also Jaden Daniels, slight injury issue perhaps. Obviously Marcus Mariota came on when they were playing last week. Now, he said that if that was in the playoffs, they wouldn't have gotten him off the field, But if that's exacerbated or, it flares back up, gets worse. If, Yaya Diaby is great at getting at that at the QB. So if he goes in with the tackle and causes an injury, you could be looking at Mariota coming in again. And Mariota is competent enough as a backup, but in the playoffs, I don't think he's any match.
Fair enough. And if it is your last time on the show this season, if the Buccaneers are to lose, what's your take been on the season overall? Because, it's probably what you expected to win the division. But, overall, what's your take been on the year overall for your Bucs?
Pretty fine. Like, there's been some poor games in there. There's been some really bad performances. Bowles is kind of on the hot seat for a lot of Bucs fans. It's frustrating to see because I think he deserves the respect that you shouldn't be on Twitter the week of the playoffs saying fire Todd Bowles, get rid of Bowles. We need to make sure we keep Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator, because he's potentially linked with kind of some jobs elsewhere in the league for head coach. For his first time, it could be head coach. And I'm just like, you've got to give Bowles the chance to finish this season. You can't just think whether the players or whoever admit it, they will see this stuff on Twitter through burner accounts. We know Deshaun Watson certainly has a burner account, but I just think this negativity it can feed in. And the other thing is obviously I didn't have us down as finishing with such few wins. I thought we'd be an 11 or 12 win team. Denver game was a big shock third week after the kind of high of that 2017 win over the Lions. I thought this is where we really kick on. It just hasn't been there, and we've been stop and start throughout the season. We got over the line, but I would like to see some fluidity here. And in the playoffs, I would like a deep run. I would like to win at least 2 games, as everyone would, but I'd like to beat that championship game with a good chance, probably against the Lions at Detroit. A rerun last season, and we've already went there this season and won it, so there'll be no reason not to fear. And they don't have Aiden Hutchinson, who was the biggest thorn in the side in that game. I think he sacked Baker like 5 times in the one game. So without him, I feel like, this is a tricky one because you just don't know what the Commanders are going to do. But as a season, it's been fine. I don't think it's necessarily better than last year, but I think the talent we've brought in terms of rookies and the draft has just been so much better, and I think we'll really kick on from this season into the next, no matter what happens.
Well, they're saying that I think Campbell was saying it. Hutchinson may be back for that game in the title game. It's not confirmed. It's not definitely, but I think they're aiming for that. At least a bit part role in that game, and potentially then lining up for the Super Bowl 2 weeks later. But then finally, our last game is going to be Monday Night Football as the Rams host the Vikings. I think if I'd not watched that Lions-Vikings game, I'd have more faith in the Vikings. But after watching that performance against the Lions, it's such a big moment, I'm going to give it to the Rams. We mentioned the Bengals before. No one wants to play them in the playoffs on their form at that time. And I don't think anyone right now wants to play the Rams on their current form. They only lost against the Seahawks, but they were all in playoffs, so not as important. But I think the Rams have been excellent these last few weeks. To go from 1-4 to being the third team in the NFC is just a fantastic achievement. And I think they get the win here. They're at home as well. I just feel like, as good as the Vikings have been, I just worry that they're going to come up short once again in the playoffs. But, Ross, back to you. Who wins this game for you?
I was very glad the Rams sat people last week, because if they hadn't and they went out and won, we would be facing the Vikings, and I would rather face the Commanders than the Vikings. Personally, I can't see why. I know there was a game against Detroit, but that also really didn't mean a whole lot in terms of the overall. It's not like that's derailing the Vikings season. What a season. I think Sam Darnold's going to get a big deal. I think he's proven he deserves a big deal. Don't think it'll be anywhere near Dak or Jordan Love, but he'll still get a good amount. I don't know if the Rams have... I'm not saying they don't have a good team, but I just don't really see where they go on a run or they get deep in the playoffs. I'm going to take the Vikings here.
And then finally, Graham?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Vikings as well. Just echoing, Sam Darnold probably comeback player of the year this year in the NFL. Just the, I can remember at the start of the season, the Texans were talking about playing the Vikings. They spoke about the rookie QB, and they were gearing up for him. And then when they got wind it was going to be Sam Darnold, it was almost like they were, let's go, let's go Minnesota. Wipe them with Sam Darnold under center, and then look what happened. We went up there and got an absolute spanking. And they've continued to not take their foot off a lot of people's throats this season. The only thing that really saved it from getting any worse in that game against them was the fact I think Justin Jefferson hurt his pinky in the first half, and I brought up on another show somewhere about pinky gate and how you couldn't catch the ball again that whole game. But they have been an outstanding story this year, and the Rams, for being as slow as they were at the start of the year, to turn it around and to put themselves in this position, that's all fine and well. But the Vikings record could have won any division it could have won that division any other year. It's been so competitive, that NFC North, that I don't think anyone really wants to play the NFC North. They've all been very strong teams this year. I just really look at the numbers that the Vikings top players have put up, and they're dangerous. There's certainly players I like on Los Angeles, like Puka Nacua. I think he's brilliant. Really helped them get where they are this year, but that Vikings team, and they travel well. Their fans travel well. I don't know how true the story was. I heard, and maybe you've all read it as well. The Vikings franchise actually bought $2 million worth of tickets, was it, for last week's game, and sold them back to their own fans at a cheaper rate just so they could fill it out. This is what they do, and if they get that kind of fan support on the day, anything's possible, especially when you're having to go on the road as such. So Vikings for me.
Okay, so there we are. That is our predictions done. Only one game that has had all of us saying the same team. Otherwise, it is all different winners. And actually, amazingly, Ross and Graham have got the exact same predictions, and I've got all different ones. So it really is Scotland against Wales of these predictions. We've all gone for wins for the Buccaneers, but then Ross and Graham have gone for wins for the Texans, Steelers. Actually, no, ignore me. There's one more. It was Bills. Broncos is one that me and Graham have got the same one as. So we both got the Bills. Ross has got the Broncos, whereas Ross and Graham have got the Texans, the Steelers. Oh my God, I'm getting them wrong again. There's more than just one. So ignore what I've just said. In the end, I've gone for wins for the Chargers, Ravens, Bills, Packers, Bucs, and Rams. Ross has gone for wins for the Texans, the Steelers, Broncos, Packers, Bucs, Vikings. And Graham has gone for the Texans, Steelers, Bills, Eagles, Buccaneers, and Vikings. There we are. That is our wildcard round preview done. Thank you once again, both for Graham and Ross, for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
No problem at all. They will all be tagged in socials when this episode is released. But in the meantime, this has been our Across the Pod Wildcard Round preview with your host, Andy Davis, our guest today, Ross and Graham, and we'll see you guys on next.